Yep, and I think if you miss out on one of those, say, top 6, top 7 guys, including Justin Fields in there, I wouldn't go crazy and just feel like you have to be compelled to reach for Trevor Lawrence or Tua just because you don't have a quarterback. Because I think this year in quarterback is unusually deep, where you've got guys like Geno Smith's going outside the top 125. He was QB5 in fantasy last year. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones. Like, these are guys who might not start in 12-team leagues, but I think that if you come out of your draft with one of those guys, you're not in the worst place.
Jay, I disagree with you slightly, just in the fact that I think Lawrence is in another tier. We'll get to this in a second, but I think Lawrence is in the tier 2. So I think for me it cuts off at 8. Right? My top 8 in order are Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Herbert, Burrow, Fields, and then Trevor Lawrence at 8. And that's where I'm like, if I don't get one of those top 8 guys, then I'm in the Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff tier.
Yeah, you don't want to
Richardson.
Don't want to reach for Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott.
Those guys make me nervous. Where are you at, Lawrence?
Yeah. So like you were saying, how you would like to get one of these guys in the 4th or 5th round, but like it's tough. It's getting tougher now because we've been doing some drafts and we've seen Jalen Hurts go in the 2nd round. We've seen Patrick Mahomes and Josh. We've seen your top 3 guys go as early as the 2nd. So it's like then next tier, that next tier of Lamar, Herbert, and Joe Burrow is going at the 3rd round. So if you really want these guys, this specific tier, like you might have to go around up because I would love to get Lamar Jackson in the 4th round or the 5th round, but he's now going in the 3rd and probably as the quarterback 4 off the draft board.
He was going at 5 or 6 among quarterbacks, and he's risen up the draft boards as sort of the hype on the Ravens offense continues to build. But I'm fine with Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, just in terms of at cost.
Let's look at tier 2.
Yeah, so let's look at tier 2. There you go.
Tier
Look
2,
at Connor keeping us on the rails.
This group is led by Lamar Jackson, but it is a cluster because you have Herbert, you have Joe Burrow. Listen, the ADPs are not too far with that group, and then you have a bit of a drop-off, a little one with Fields and a bigger one with Trevor Lawrence.
By the way, with the exception of maybe Trevor Lawrence, every single one of these guys has number 1 quarterback in fantasy upside within the range of outcomes. And Lawrence has top 5. I mean, Justin Fields was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy for, a little bit of time last year. Joe Burrow led the NFL in passing touchdowns last year, I believe. Herbert has been the number 2 fantasy quarterback as recently as 2 years ago. Lamar Jackson won everybody that had him in their league in 2019. So, I mean, like, all these guys have number 1 quarterback in fantasy within their range of outcomes. I'm not saying they're going to be, but I don't know. By the way, think about even Trevor Lawrence, right? Week 6 through 16 last year, 10 different games. He was the 6th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis. 2nd year in Peterson's system. I expect him to be better this year. He runs more than you think he does. They've added Calvin Ridley, obviously. All of their offensive players are back. The offensive line's a question, but to me, Lawrence is the tier. Deshaun Watson is the one that makes me super nervous this year.
Jay, I know you were pitching Justin Herbert as his ride or die. And when you look at Herbert, there's so much to be excited about. It's not just that Kellen Moore is there and how much great work he did with Dallas's offense, but the fact that Herbert, most passing yards and 2nd most passing touchdowns by a quarterback in his first 3 NFL seasons, he feels like the guy out of this group that if he started to not fall but was taken in this ADP range, could be one of the best value plays because people are going to take Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow early. That's just natural.
Yeah, and I think that people maybe fall into the trap of just looking at what Justin Herbert did last year, whereas I think 2 years ago is a better indicator for what he'll do this year because last year he played with a broken rib. His offensive line was banged up, no Rashawn Slater, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they missed time. It just wasn't an explosive downfield offense, and Austin Eckler came on this show and talked about that, how they just didn't have any downfield options.
Correct.
Now they have more options. Now they have Rashawn Slater. They'll have more time. And Justin Herbert, 2 years ago, he was QB2 as a very young quarterback. He should be a better player now in a potentially better system and a more explosive system. So 5,000 passing yards, 40 touchdowns through the air is very much in play for Herbert, who also can run a little bit.
Over the last 3 years, no quarterback in the NFL has had more passing yards in his first 3 NFL seasons than Justin Herbert, right? The most passing yards, the 2nd most passing touchdowns. Like, it would be really fascinating if you threw all the quarterbacks back in the real NFL and had a real-life draft, and where I think Mahomes still goes 1.
He does.
But, it's I think people would be surprised at how high Herbert would go. I don't think I don't think people think of him as an elite NFL quarterback the way that, like, if you talk to scouts or people inside the league, they think he's right there with Josh Allen, with
Burrow,
with Burrow, with Jalen Hurts, among the elite young quarterbacks of the NFL. Like, he's right there.
As we look at tier 3 here, Lawrence, I want to ask you, who's the last quarterback you're comfortable with as your starter? Where does the drop-off go of, man, that guy's got to be a backup for me or a waiver priority?
That's tough here because I'm looking at Kirk Cousins right now, right? But he's been a top 12 quarterback at least the past 3 seasons, right? But then you look at
That's literally his legal name, Kirk Cousins, top 12 quarterback.
Yes.
Never a top 10, always top 12.
Right, and we never, it's I don't know, it's because it's Kirk Cousins, but then you look at the upside of some of the other quarterbacks in here. You got Tua with the weapons. You got Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson. Matthew, you mentioned how nervous he makes you, but you know why? It's because it's like he could go back to being here because we've seen it. Or is he going to come out this season and be like, I don't know. But the quarterback I'll say here is actually Daniel Jones, and this is why. We know Daniel Jones has that rushing upside, but he's not getting drafted with those other quarterbacks that have that same rushing. I'm not even including Anthony Richardson in this because he's a rookie, but he's the only quarterback that could run for 700, 800 yards that's not getting picked next to Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. So I would say he would be the last guy I would want out of that tier.
I'll tell you right now, I think that's a great point, Lawrence, in terms of, like, Daniel Jones is just, like, so much talk about, like, Richardson in this tier and some of the other elite guys, and Watson, obviously, who I have at 11, is somebody that, people have a wide range of opinions on. But Daniel Jones, like, okay, so last year, his first year in Daboll's system, like, ends up, having a really good year, gets the big extension, wins a playoff game, goes on the road, wins a playoff game. You mentioned the mobility as well. Like, Daboll, who had so much success with Josh Allen, has done a lot of the same RPO stuff with Daniel Jones. And so I always believe a second year in the system for a guy is always important. Last year was Jalen Hurts' second year in Nick Sirianni's system, right? And so we talked about Trevor Lawrence, his second year. He's going to be in Doug Peterson's system. This is the second year Daniel Jones will be in Brian Daboll's system. And we make so much fun about, like, they've added 8 billion wide receivers to that room, but they've upgraded. The fact is they've surrounded Daniel Jones with more talent, right? Drafting Jalen Hyatt. They found something in the middle of the year last year in Isaiah Hodgins. Obviously, the addition of Darren Waller, getting Saquon Barkley back, that was huge for that team. And so, whether it's Darius Slayton or the health of Sterling Shepard, there's more depth at that position for the Giants that they didn't have. And then you add in the rushing and the play calling of Daboll. I was in a 10-team super flex league last night, and I got Burrow at pick 8, which was shocking to me that he fell that far. But I was able to get Daniel Jones as my second quarterback, in the 8th or 9th round.
That's crazy.
Right. Right. I mean, just again, Daniel Jones maybe because he's a bland personality. He's just whatever. No, but people don't.
Yeah. Right.
They don't appreciate him the way they should. I swear.
He had games where he threw for 70-something yards. He had 3 games last year over 225 yards passing. Right. 2 of those were against the Vikings, right, who had the second to worst defense. The other time was against the Houston Texans. So that might have something to do with it. But it's like against teams like the Vikings in the playoffs, he threw for the 300 yards. So it may be about, the matchups, because the very next week versus the Eagles is different. So maybe it has to do with the matchup, the second year in the offense, but for some reason he just don't get drafted with the other mobile quarterbacks.
I also think, again, I'm going to go off script here for a second. I'll just say this, that I think this gets missed a lot in fantasy football analysis. These are people. They are human beings with egos and tempers and emotions, and a football team is exactly like any other business, right? That building, there are politics, there are strong relationships, there are bad relationships, there is jealousy and ego and people you really like and people that you could do without, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So think about Daniel Jones. Again, I've met Daniel Jones once in my life when he was a rookie. So I can't say I know the guy at all. But I'm just thinking about it from his point of view. At this time last year, Daniel Jones, brand new head coach, brand new general manager, neither of whom had drafted him or invested anything in him. They hadn't picked up his 5th-year contract. all the New York media is this the guy? Was this a bust? Is this the last vestige of Gettleman's run that was so awful? Like, we'll see what we have in Daniel Jones. They were so salary cap strapped. They didn't do anything in the offseason last year heading into the season. They're just like, we're gonna roll out whoever we got. They got street free agents like Isaiah Hodgins out, right? I mean, they've just and so Daniel Jones is a little bit like, am I still gonna be in the league a year from now? Like, what's going on, right? Daniel Jones comes in, buys into the system, has a great year, just pure NFL wise, leads the team to the playoffs in a surprising way. Daboll wins Coach of the Year, and look at this swag with the khaki pants, right?
It's a winner.
But that's a guy who does all that, and then in the offseason gets the big contract. The Giants commit to him in a big way, and they're like, hey, you are our QB1, right? You are the guy. You are now the face of the franchise, you and Saquon. And I think it was telling, right? I mean, they got that deal done before they got Saquon's deal done. Saquon's still looking for a long-term deal. He just got the 1-year deal. But I think there's a different mindset when you're coming into the building knowing I'm the guy. It doesn't matter what I do. Definitely. I'm here for the next 4 years or whatever it is versus, hey, I'm playing for my job and I've got new bosses that don't really, have anything invested in me. They can get rid of me at the end of the year and it doesn't cost them their jobs because they didn't draft me. And so I think there's something to that. And I think Daniel Jones will play with more confidence and aggressiveness this year, again, in a system in where Daboll, now they believe in him too, because they're like, okay, we now know there's more stuff we can do with Daniel Jones.
I think there's just some stench on his name because of the remnants of the Joe Judge era in particular, where it just kind of all descended into farce. And now it's just a new world for Daniel Jones. I mean, he was QB 9 last year and sat out the last game of the season. I think when I was talking about being okay waiting on quarterback, that's mainly because you think about where Trevor Lawrence is going. There is in some drafts it will break that you could be choosing between Dameon Pierce and Trevor Lawrence in that kind of range. And I would rather have Dameon Pierce and Daniel Jones than say Trevor Lawrence and Elijah Mitchell or Ezekiel Elliott, guys going in the really deep range around guys like
I don't think it's going to go
and
that
Geno.
far. I think you're more looking at more like Trevor Lawrence and like maybe Cam Akers.
Like David Montgomery, maybe.
Daniel Jones
I
going
really like David Montgomery.
149.
Isaiah Pacheco.
He's going outside the top 110 right now, Daniel Jones. So I don't know. It's pretty
But the question is
the
why?
point is that we all agree Daniel Jones is a value this year. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.